they have before, then go to the doctors to get straight. And they do. The poor, ignorant mother, please mothers, don't get angry with me, let me finish, not knowing any better, suffers greatly with her daughter. The poor, ignorant father, not knowing any more than the mother or daughter, suffers equally and says, yes, something must be wrong, and they all run to the great white coats in the sky for direction and and help. Please bring it on. Please, my daughter has not suffered, gone through a menses yet, as I have. Make her go through it so I can be proud of her and know that she is healthy. And a guy said, yeah, that's right. They know what they're talking about. And neither of them do. And in many cases, neither does the medical doctor under the oath of Hippocrates that they suffered through too. So ignorance leads ignorance, and the blind lead the blind, and they induce the menses by ways that would turn your stomach. Or maybe you've heard of some of the ways that the present medical allopathic practitioners induce the menses in young girls who have not had a cycle, because they know if they have not had a cycle, that girl is sick, and they want to make her well. By barbaric methodologies, do you want me to spell it out, or can you imagine? Those prone lie-down tables which women help themselves strap into have induced more trauma that some women never get over, but usually on a 6-month basis they go for more. Not only sulfur and drugs that are caustic to epidermal tissue are administered internally to a woman, but solutions and devices are inserted that can even tear up the womb in the best practitioner who has loving tenderness on his or her mind. Some women never recover from that. And yes, it will bring on some kind of hemorrhaging, I guarantee you. The old ways, the folk ways, the dumb ways, using herbals to do anything you wanted to and magnets to do anything you wanted to, would be too simple, too simplistic for the modern practitioners of medicine, so they make it a dual thing. You have to usually come back twice a month for 6 months, and they get rich off of your suffering, and then you experience the final crustacea, the final wonderful thing. You have a menses. Isn't that wonderful? That's because, in ignorance, woman thinks that that is the only way she can be healthy, and the absence of which means ill health or pregnancy. Oh, how we have suffered through ignorance. Original female, when she wanted to bring forth birth, simply agitated the elements under her direction, under her matrix, and began to form self. First of all, as living beings, and this is the ancient legend when people were not born through eggs, and then later on, as she mated again with animals, had to go through the animal methodology of producing through living birth and through, again, excretion and term. All original zygotes are female when formed. I repeat, all original zygotes are female when formed. They later change. Usually after 6 to 8 weeks, the male fetus starts to secrete testosterone. Otherwise, it would remain a female. All males start off life as a female in the womb, presently in this moon cycle. Hear this now, it's going to start getting worse with each sentence. Bear with me. Sometimes a small quantity of testosterone is secreted, just enough to make testes form on the developing embryo, but not enough to utilize proper brain chemistry and pituitary gland balance, and indigenous homosexuality is produced. What did he say? What did he say? You don't want me to repeat that? I know you don't want to hear that again. Yeah, you do. I knew it. Just gluttons for punishment, aren't you? Just like going to the MDs, some of them. Sometimes a small quantity of testosterone is secreted just enough to make testes form on the developing embryo, but not enough to utilize proper brain chemistry and pituitary gland balance, and indigenous homosexuality is produced. Gets worse. Birthmarks are the mental impregnation and decreased ability of woman to still mark and control the fleshly vibratory cell states within her body. In other words, if you are frightened by something, usually in your second or third trimester, if you crave something, usually in the last of your first, second, and third trimester, if you are any way involved with something that stays on your mind, you mark your child or fetus with that thought. Now, before you laugh at that, how many of you have craved the strawberries, which shows a lack of calcium and phosphorus and a need for iodine, and then you have a strawberry patch on the baby, usually on the left side of a boy, the right side of a girl. The boy is usually carried higher, and the girl is usually carried lower, and so on and so forth again. Just reverse that, because the boy's head is bigger, usually lower for the boy, higher for the girl. And the child is usually marked left or right, depending on its sex, with your thought. You're scared by a mouse, or you're frightened, or you think about, if a mouse ever ran across, I'd probably faint. Here's a little mouse marked on your child there. It begins to break up as the cells expand, but you can see it distinctly at birth. Or you have these cravings. That shows at one time you could mentally control fleshly cells, especially within your matrix and sphere, and now you don't know how to any longer, so it kicks in, but you don't control it. That is mind power, now at its most deficient. At one time it was at its most proficient. Dermoid cysts are the undeveloped cells starting the first trimester of fetal development, and microscopic examination will verify that fact. You are budding outside of the womb. Most cysts are mutating cells that do not follow a pattern. Dermoid cyst is a birth in the cavity, what they call the operoom, that does not have a womb, and usually results in a huge cyst that must be removed. Teeth, hair, and cell structure can be readily seen on a dermoid cyst. Fibroid tumors are the results of the vibrations budding along the reproductive organs and tract, but not being able to start the mitosis, and so they just act as little buds throughout the reproductive area, especially when meat is present in great degrees in that female system. You didn't hear either of those things either, did you? No, I know you didn't. Well, then buy the tape. The word conception means to conceive mentally. Look it up. The word conception, first IBID definition, means to conceive mentally, not to conceive in the womb. Take a deep breath. Now we get to the real rough stuff. You thought this was rough? This was nothing. Now it gets rough. Man descended from woman. Circumcision is the artificial means to finalize that separation, and when the race of man was having a hard time making it here, especially certain kinds of man, human, the foreskin tried to cover the penis just as it is cloaked in the clitoris, and consequently the male had to actually cut off this foreskin as he tried to become what he once was, a woman. The male testes is a woman's descended ovum now encased within the scrotum. The male penis is an elongated clitoris. The female fallopian tubes, named by Fallopius again in 1523, is nothing more than the male vas deferens or urethra duct, which is both of the fallopian tubes joined together, an amalgamation of the fallopian ducts. The male prostate, which males usually by the time of 12 to 40 have problems with and usually don't even function well after 40, the reason why is now going to be explained to you. It is nothing more than an atrophied womb. And every man has the vestibular mammary glands that go along with it, and during times of pregnancy of a woman can lactate. And during times of the month can lactate too, especially if those mammary glands are titillated or excited. I know it's rough to hear it and take it, but you think about it, and when you find me wrong, then we'll talk about it. The bulbourethral glands of the male are equal to the larger so-called vestibular glands of the woman. It simply means that amongst the male gland reproductive is a gland called the orchic. How many men know where their orchics are? How many men knew you had an orchic? How many women know that you have 3 glands that you've never been told about, and one of them you've only partially been told about? That's why I list it as a third. Don't leave yet then. The female thyroid gland has 3 lobes. The male thyroid gland has 2 lobes. And the reason why the female thyroid gland has 3 lobes is because she tries to store up thyroxine through iodine storage and is always usually craving it in a deficient way. The chemical iodine we get here is not the sodium iodine that she needs, and she's always craving iodine. The closest substitute is simply iron. It is not the substitute though. Seaweed and plants like chlorella and chlorophyll-containing water plants give her most of those proficient things. Land plants usually can't make the grades, and most of the women that take chlorophyll will find it's from alfalfa. That's why they're not satisfied physically in their thyroid reproduction. Thyroxine is not rich from land plants, which also have chemicals within them. Hear well something I know no other white man or black man has told anybody in here, and then all you have to do is do the research to see if it is true. The other 2 female secret glands is one called the epiphoron, E-P-O-O-P-H-O-R-O-N, the epiphoron. In good physiological guides and studies of physiognomy, it is between the ovary and the uterus in what is called the mesosphinx. Yes, M-E-S-O-S-A-P-I-N-X, the mesosphinx. You can look it up in your physiological text, or just go to a med store near a pre-med college, and you don't even have to take it out. Just glance through, look it up, write it down. You can leave the book there. Within the epiphoron in the mesosphinx is something called the parophoron. P-A-R-O-O-P-H-O-R-O-N, the parophoron. It produces seminal fluid and seminal secretions, just like in a male. Those glands in many cases are atrophied, and the eating of salt is one of the things that atrophies them, as it does the thymus gland, which is a gland of youth. Those glands reflect from the biblical cord. That's not what you call it, is it? I call it the biblical cord. And biblical is what it's supposed to be. I say that because it is through misteachings of a religion that sought to subjugate women and bring them under church control that the truth of these books and